Welcome to our fifth Agile seminar on attendance. I'm delighted today to be joined by Rachel Kenningham. She is Head of Policy at School Home Support. School Home Support is a charity that has been helping to get children back into school for the past 35 years. They do this through expert practitioners who work directly with families to address the wide range of complex and entrenched issues that can lead to non-attendance. You might remember that SHS were also involved in the study published in October by Public First, indicating a seismic shift in parental attitudes towards school attendance. Rachel has kindly agreed to join us today, share some of what SHS has learned through their work on attendance over the past few decades. Rachel, thank you for joining us. Over to you.
Thank you, Sam, and good morning, everybody. I'm also in a very cold office, so at least I won't fall asleep during my own presentation, which has got to be a good start. Yes, I'm Rachel Kenningham. I'm delighted to be part of this series, which is all about sharing best practice and collaborating more for the greater good. School Home Support is a national charity, and we're all about fundamentally closing that disadvantage gap, which sees outcomes for kids from poorer backgrounds falling way behind those from their better off peers. I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes today with a set of slides. I want to give you a bit of background on School Home Support and why we exist. I'll then talk you through our philosophy and our model and how we do it as an external provider, so you can start to think about, what relevance that might have to you. And then the last part of the presentation will be about, I suppose, do's and don'ts for folk who are interested in integrating a whole family support approach into their wider practice. Yes. So here we are, School Home Support. We've been around, as Sam says, for about 35, nearly 40 years now. And we're big supporters of the big advocates of a support-led approach. Fundamentally, and our principal initial raison d'etre was about delivering our expert practitioners delivering on a referrals basis, really practical help to families whose kids were missing school or weren't engaging in school. Now, as we've grown as an organisation, we're still a delivery organisation, but we're also involved in advocacy work. And what we want to see is a system which is properly funded to allow us to embed early intervention and whole family support around schools. So when that kind of approach is necessary, it's available to school leaders. Our focus is about underlying issues, identifying them, tackling them, and then putting in place collaborative plans, if you like, with parents as partners, as equal, to carry on after we've finished our work. For those of you who are in the sort of policy wonk world, you may have heard of us. We were highlighted by the Education Select Committee as a recommendation to government because of our whole family support approach and the impact that we've been having on turning attendance problems around. The Education Select Committee conducted an inquiry into tackling persistent absence, which began in January of last year. And one of its recommendations was that whole family support should be more comprehensively integrated in our support-led approach, which the government guidance talks about. I've done some special colourful highlighting there at the moment. No silver bullets, no quick fixes. It's something that I don't need to tell this audience, that tackling absence is a serious business, and it's not something you do overnight when it's become entrenched, either persistently absent, where we're looking at 10% of school missed, or severe absence, 50% of school missed. So we're very much from the school of no silver bullets in this, and no quick fixes. These are some of the kind of guises that you may have recognised, may have heard of us before. So fundamentally, we're known for our family support practitioner service that we deliver through schools. We do that nationally. Our first ever practitioner service was in London, in the south, but now we have as many practitioners working in northern schools as we do in the south. We do a lot more now supporting schools with best practice, because we recognise that schools might want to do their own thing. So I've named a couple of work streams there that you might be interested in. We have a senior attendance leadership training programme for school leaders who want to absorb this approach in their wider practice and then maybe cascade within a school. I've also put down there the attendance toolkit, which we launched last year, sort of mid-2023. And that was about bringing to life and providing resources for those who were tasked with reading and implementing the government guidance on tackling and improving attendance. And the last, guys, where you might have some glimmer of recognition is our national campaign, the Dig a Little Deeper campaign, which is all about trying to persuade policymakers and opinion formers that a support-led approach is really worth investing in. Dig a Little Deeper is a name that we chose for the campaign because it really describes our approach to working with families. We've got the time and the inclination and the belief that if you get under the bonnet of a family, if you like, and really listen and build trust, you can really, really, really help to empower them to transform their own lives. And I put the mission statement at the end there. This is a really nice slide because it's colourful and it doesn't involve me talking so much. It's summarising really what I've just talked to you about, what we do and how we do it. So as a practitioner, I'm working with a family. I'm working between the school and the family. But really what I'm doing, my remit is in attendance, and I'm looking to improve the number of days of kids in school. But I'm really about promoting for the long-term engagement between school and home. And I'm about finding what the practical solutions are to the family's problems as they see them. And I'm about making sure that family is able to benefit from deeper and more skillful personal resources in terms of how they approach their child's education, and also kind of more broadly as they're looking at tackling issues that might be around housing or benefits, or it might be around transport, a whole host of issues that we know can be underlying reasons for a child not getting into school. I've talked a bit about our outcomes, and what we like to say here is that we're only interested in long-term outcomes. We're interested in sustained improvements to attendance. So, ultimately at the end of an intervention with a family, we are delivering really positive results. It's a successful model. This year we've delivered on average an improvement of 16 days for persistently absent children, and 20 days for those who are severely absent. And that's on the basis of a sort of 8-month support intervention. So it's a successful model, but you'd also want to see some longer term changes as a result of that kind of investment. So as well as improving attendance, we want to make some progress on parental engagement and participation in the child's learning, because we know that's where the magic happens, and also, improved character and resilience in the whole family. So it really is this whole family support approach to absence, which we really very passionately believe in. I'm going to now, if the tech gods are willing, share a short case study with you. It's a real case study of one of the families that we've worked with quite recently. As you would expect, all the names of the people involved have been changed, and that's about safeguarding the families who agree to have their stories shared with others and more widely. But I really like these case studies because I think that it really illustrates, and I hope you'll agree with me, that it illustrates the complexity of challenge that families are facing right now. And that'll come as no surprise to you. All of us have been changed and affected, I think, in some way by these twin crises, the mental health crises and the cost of living crises that are the legacies of the pandemic. But the sorts of families that we work with are hardest hit by those circumstances. And so when they're referred to us by schools, they have really complex problems that naturally mean getting their children to school on time every day sometimes becomes a second or third order issue. Maybe they've been evicted, maybe there are chaotic circumstances that are just so tough. So I think these case studies are good because they do illustrate the complexity of challenge. One stats just popped into my mind from our impact report this year. I think it was 2/3 of our families, just above 2/3 actually of our families, were presenting at referral with at least two major issues. Inappropriate housing, poverty, worklessness, a whole range of issues. So that's a lot of issues to deal with, as well as supporting your child at school. So complexity of challenge for the families, but also, and this will resonate with you, I hope, the layers of support that are needed to try and get that child happy to come into school and to stay there. And that really underlines, I think, what a tough challenge this is, and where we really need to work together. It's layers of support that we provide, particularly at the moment, to get children back into school. But then finally, I hope positive stuff at the end, because as you'll see with this case study, a child who started with 77% attendance ended up with 93, and fundamentally the family was more engaged and the child was happy to be at school. So I'm now going to give over to Selena's story, and I hope you'll see those points illustrated.
Selena's story. Selena's school referred her to school home support because of worries about her well-being and how she was presenting at school. Sadly, the family had lost Selena's mum, and so it was just Selena and Dad at home. Without much contact with Dad, school was not making any progress in improving things for Selena, and her attendance was just 77%. The house was very untidy and cluttered and wasn't a safe environment for Selena to be living in. Dad was facing several challenges. He did not work and was struggling financially. Sometimes they had no food at home, and Dad was reluctant to engage with school and ask for the support they needed. The School Home Support Welfare Fund to get Selena a new winter uniform, a coat to make sure she was warm and comfortable going to school, and a new fridge. She also made a successful application to Buttle UK, which paid for bereavement counselling for Selena, as well as a pass for the local theme park to enjoy at the weekend and during school holidays. The grant also meant that Selena could go shopping for her own clothes, which she really enjoyed doing. Dad now knows that if there is a time they are struggling for food, he can reach out and receive food parcels from school. Dad also got a full-time job, which has greatly eased their financial pressures and improved his mental health and confidence. At school, Selena is presenting much happier. Her attendance has increased to 93%. And Dad is now more willing to engage with school and will seek help rather than ignoring any issues that develop. He has shared that it is good to have someone who really understands his situation.
Okay, I hope we can maybe talk a bit about that case study at the end when we're in the Q&A session. I mean, I think that particular case study gives you an idea of the different kinds of support that was instigated by that practitioner, a very good practitioner actually. She had access to networks where she was able to get charities to support for the family. She was able to identify some of the needs that needed specialist provision and support, the bereavement counselling, and put those in place and just get on with it. And that would have been based on, first of all, getting to know that family and building that dad's trust, who's obviously been through an enormous amount of stuff. Approaching always with kindness. The approach, I like to refer to the approach as a sort of arm round the shoulder, fist in the back approach. It's about moving families on and helping them to help themselves. The next slide I just want to share with you, hopefully.
Selena's story.
So there are certain tenets to our approach which are really important, which if I think you were going to do it yourselves or you were going to work with an organisation like ours, you should look for. And they're listed on this slide here. We call it the School Home Support Framework for Sustainable Support Outcomes. So this is all about, yes, delivering those improved days in school, but also what happens afterwards. And I won't read the slide because that's painful. But it is really about looking at the wider factors that are driving school absence. This year we've had presenting issues which won't, the most common presenting issues won't surprise you, related to mental health, cost of living crisis, and also housing has been a big theme this year. And the way of working is to be very targeted about tackling, identifying problems, and then putting solutions in place, and bringing in and pulling in resources that will help to maximise the impact of an intervention. The way we work with parents is very much as partners right from the beginning. The earlier we can build a relationship with the parent, and that the parent takes responsibility and ownership for the programme of support, the better and the more effective. Our practitioners have a strong focus on data and working with the school to look at different the different data outcomes in terms of days in school and not in school, and the patterns that might be emerging. That's fundamental because we need to track the effectiveness of the work, but also because it helps you adjust and adapt to your approach. Partnership working, which is something that, you know, I know is happening in the sector through attendance hubs and through initiatives like this CSD series, collaborative partnerships, trying to work with other schools to share resources and those kind of things, share best practice, is something that we really do and we live as our value. And I think then I thought I put the little note on about sanctions because I think you're probably interested in what we think about sanctions. Sanctions are part of the system, and we think that's probably right. I think you need to have that in the system. But that said, I think our approach is very much as sanctions as an absolute last resort. And we say that because I think the effectiveness of sanctions on actually improving attendance and relationships between home and school is very contested. I'm not sure it's helpful for families who've already got lots of other problems, particularly financial problems. And I think it can be counterproductive in an initiative, an intervention that's aimed on building the bridge between home and school. So that's a snapshot of our sustainable outcomes approach, which hopefully you will take something from. So for the last part of this presentation, and I've probably got about 5 minutes left, I'm going to do talk in 3 sections on some suggestions for school. The first one is around staff who are working with families in this way, and that will be a little bit around efficacy, but also around safety. I want to say 1 or 2 words about parental participation planning, and really sort of elevating that in your school, in your work, and then a little bit about budgeting for whole family support at the end. So supporting staff. So I want to say a few things here about the sorts of staff that I think are good at this kind of work, and I'm going to base that on the sorts of staff that we look for who are doing whole family practitioner support work. There are certain staff who are very good at this kind of work, and they tend to be people with good judgment, people with a strong heart, but also are difficult to shock, because a lot of the work working with families can be unpredictable. Our practitioners are from a range of backgrounds that tend to be attracted to this work and be good at it. We've got ex-teachers, ex-social workers, ex-military, ex-police, a real range of people who are really skilled to do this kind of work. So I think first thing, if you're going to start integrating this approach, it's about choosing the right staff. Second point there is around is a sort of safeguarding aspect to that. going into families' homes and working in this quite intense way with families, it needs to be done in a professional manner. Most of our families are so grateful to receive the support that you're offering. Home visits are a pleasure. They might they might form part of a practitioner's approach to building new routines in the day or making sure children are out of school. So all sorts of reasons that you might be in school. But there are risks, and you need to be alive to those. So it's really important that when your staff are working in home settings, that they're trained to do that. In terms of staff doing the work, ongoing training in specific things is also really important, and having access to professional networks of people who are doing the same job. So they're not just the only person in the school who's dealing with these often quite intense emotional situations. As well as all the kind of the training that you would expect. Our practitioners receive training in economic well-being and how to support that, attendance and how to improve attendance and work on attendance from our approach. And the final one has just slipped my mind. Attendance, well-being, and parental engagement, of course, really important. How to build a parental engagement strategy with the school that really supports some of the more vulnerable parents. Number 4 on my list of things to think about is about professional supervision for the people who are doing this work. Some sort of supervision is really, really helpful for staff because the work is intense, and it's really important to be able to download that with somebody who understands and can guide in a professional way. Our practitioners are working with around about 15 caseloads at the same time, so that can be a lot of big stuff going on there. So regular supervision is really important if you can provide it. And the final one I put there is around support from the top, from the senior leadership team. It's like all these issues, safeguarding, otherwise, if there's buy-in from the top for this work, it really helps the person who's doing the job, because when you're supporting families, it can really feel sometimes like 24/7. You have to be flexible and available to do the work and to support the family. So, in terms of other responsibilities in the school, it can be too onerous if you're being pulled in too many different directions. So I hope those are useful for people thinking about who might do this work and what might be done to keep them safe. I just put this slide in because I know lots of people ask me about this. What do you need to think about for home visits? Because increasingly, because of the challenges we know families face, it is part of school's life and a practitioner's life to do home visits. So that slide, again, I'm not going to read it out. I can share it at the end of some of the things that should underpin a successful and safe home visit. Planning, making sure someone knows if you're going to do a home visit, somebody knows where you've gone and when you expect to be back. Some precautions that you might think about before you go into a home to make sure that you are on top of the visit and can be alert and ready for any potential risks that may be behind that front door. So often that's not the case, of course. It's a grateful family, but if they do, you need to be alive to those. And also being professional, keeping your promises with families. If you say you're going to do something, make sure you do it, and make sure you do it on time. And then, of course, writing up and recording notes is a really important part of this. I always say with home visits, the golden rule is expect the unexpected. You might be going in there ready to talk about Jimmy's absence and why he wasn't in school on X, Y, and Z. And when you arrive, the situation that presents yourself in that front room is totally different. And you've got to be ready for that. And you've got to be ready for that in a really professional way. So it's a serious job and it's a profession. So I think my advice is to really make sure that you talk about that with the people who are doing the work. Number 2 on my sort of suggestions for school is about dusting down your parent participation plan and making sure that it's how you want it to be. We know that communities change a lot in years, even mid-year. The sorts of families that are coming into schools can change year on year. So it's really important that that you proactively approach how you draw parents into the wider school community and to build their confidence and encourage them to take part more in their child's education if that's the problem that they face. And a parent participation plan is a really good way of looking at the different engagement events that you might have for families and thinking about whether they're community specific for your school at that moment, this year, at that time. And if you're working, as our practitioners do, on the parental participation plan, as well as working in a bespoke way with a certain group of parents, it means that you can help to integrate the two. So you can, I'm thinking again of another family of a parent that we work with who was brilliant at crochet, which is one of my lifetime ambitions. It's not the case at the moment. And the practitioner saw that in that parent. It was a parent who hated going to school, didn't feel confident in a school environment. But the practitioner was able to see and understand that this woman had this amazing talent for crochet. And between them, they set up a crochet group for parents, and it was very popular. And it really was a great way of getting the parent to feel much more confident on the other side of the school gate. And so it's things like that. It's about being creative. It's about thinking about the parents who need a little bit of extra help to get into school and education settings, and then designing a program that fits the bill. Final slide, and this is in the tips and actually final slide of the presentation, actually, is just to have a bit of a conversation around the money for this. We know that the funding situation for schools has been too difficult for too long, and therefore there isn't any extra money for certain to be thinking about dedicated support. But I do want to encourage schools to think of enhancing their pastoral function with whole family support capacity as an invest again proposition, because I think that it allows you as school leaders to think about the time and the money that you might save if you adopt an early intervention approach to families who are not engaging well with school, and the time that might save you and your team in dealing with issues that escalate down the line. So I think I'm asking you to think about the time that you spend on persistent absence, severe absence cases and beyond, if they escalate into exclusions and whatever, and think about the opportunity cost of that in terms of the other things that you could be doing as a leadership team. We know that absence has an impact not just on the child, but on the rest of the kids in the class, as when the child comes back in, you have to catch up. So the impact on the school community, I think, is really huge as well. And so I would really urge you to think about whole family support as part of your plan in that broader sense. You'll have had quite a bit of guidance from the DfE around how to fund this through the pupil premium grant, and make this sort of attendance support work part of your pupil premium strategy and planning. It's not a huge pot of money, it's certainly not enough, but I would encourage you to think about how you can integrate attendance planning and pupil premium planning together and use that money that's available. And then the last slide is really about thinking, if you are convinced that you would benefit as a school, how you might work either locally or within your trust about funding this resource. And it's about being collaborative, really. And we work as an organisation in lots of different ways. We work, yes, delivering services directly through the school, but also we work through our community model, where we're working with the local authority and providing a community service of practitioners that lots of schools can access. And in some cases, we're working with 2 or 3 schools who've just clubbed together and thought, well, we need this. Maybe the family, a particular family that's struggling, is across a few schools, and schools are clubbing together to afford the resource. I'm just going to show you the last slide now, because I think that gives you, these are some of those models that I've talked about. We do a lot. We're doing quite a lot at the moment of dedicated practitioner work directly. We're delivering the service directly through schools, particularly where absence is a really big problem in the school and it's starting to get in the way of things. So I call that the school trust model. Our community model is a good example of that. Would be something we're delivering in Liverpool with through the DFE attendance improvement programme. So we've got there 22 schools who are benefiting from a service of 11 practitioners, and so they're all hopefully referring like mad now. It's still quite a new model. The families that we think will benefit from support. That's been super successful elsewhere. We had a similar model in Blackpool, which delivered lots of benefits, not just to the families, but to the schools, and I think in terms of costings in the long term as well. And then I'll just finish on the training support programme. SHS's training support programme for schools is called the Senior Attendance Lead programme, and that's a programme. It's currently in pilot, and we are looking to identify, help schools identify, train and support senior team members in our approach. It's about getting them up and running. We usually provide ongoing supervision within that model, but it means that schools can have an homegrown resource, if you like, which often appeals. So I feel like I've talked for like 3 hours, which I don't think I have, but hopefully there's enough in there to provoke a few questions. It is not the answer to the school attendance crisis, of course, but I really would like to feel as though more schools had access to a more nuanced approach, and that they could access that and fund it, frankly. So I will hand back to you.
Rachel, thank you so much. Before we stop recording, I just want to say how much we appreciate that you came along and shared your insight with us.